My husband used to tell me that family was everything. He'd say, "When I'm gone, our daughter will take care of you." I believed him. I clung to those words like scripture. But the night my daughter dragged my old bag to the front door and hurled it into the rain, screaming, "You're holding us back." That was the night everything I thought I knew shattered, and what I discovered next changed everything. My name is Anna. I'm 68 years old, a widow and a grandmother. For most of my life, I lived in a small brick house with my husband, Henry. We raised our only daughter, Claire, there. It was never much, but it was ours. Every wall held memories, every corner whispered love. When Henry died 5 years ago, my world crumbled. And it was Claire who picked up the pieces, at least I thought she did. She said, "Mom, you can't live alone. Come stay with us. You'll be happier with family." Her voice had been soft, persuasive, dripping with affection. I believed her. I thought moving in with her was a blessing. She had a big house in the suburbs, a husband named Mark, and 2 children, Emma and Josh. I told myself I'd be useful there. I'd cook, babysit, make their lives easier. And at first I did. The first months felt almost like healing. I'd wake early, make pancakes for Emma and Josh before school, braid Emma's hair, listen to Josh chatter about dinosaurs. I washed dishes, folded laundry, planted flowers in the yard. Mark would sometimes say, "Thanks, Mom," and smile, though his eyes never really warmed. Still, I ignored it. I thought maybe he was just stressed from work. Claire, oh Claire, she was the little girl I had once held in my arms, the child I sacrificed for. I remembered nights when I worked double shifts at the diner so she could have new school shoes, or the time I sold my wedding ring to cover her tuition. She was my life, and seeing her as a mother, I thought my sacrifices had been worth it. But life has a cruel way of revealing cracks in the perfect picture. It started small. Claire would come home tired and brush me off when I tried to talk. "Not now, Mom." She'd sigh, or she'd complain if I left the television volume too high. Sometimes Mark would mutter under his breath, "Always in the way." I laughed it off, told myself I was imagining things. One afternoon, as I folded laundry, I overheard them in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but the words cut deep. "She's slowing us down," Mark said. "She's my mother," Claire whispered back, but there was no fire in her tone. "You said we'd travel. You said we'd have freedom once the kids were older. But how can we when she's always here?" A pause. Then Claire's quiet reply, "I know." I froze, holding one of Josh's shirts in my hands, my heart pounding, freedom, as if my existence was a chain around their necks. Still, I made excuses. They were just stressed. Maybe I needed to give them more space. I started staying in my room more, keeping to myself, eating meals quietly. I convinced myself that silence was better than confrontation. But silence doesn't protect you. Silence only feeds those who want to erase you. The changes grew sharper. Mark began leaving bills on the counter with a pointed look, though I had already given Claire money from my savings to help with the mortgage. Claire grew impatient when I repeated myself, snapping, "You already told me that, Mom." The children, sweet as they were, began echoing their parents' tone, sighing when I tried to hug them, rolling their eyes when I fussed over their homework. I swallowed the pain. I reminded myself, they're my family. Families stick together. Then came the day that sealed my fate. It was raining. Cold, merciless rain. I had made soup, hoping to warm everyone up. But when Claire walked in, soaked from work, she didn't even glance at me. Mark followed, muttering about money, about responsibilities. Their voices rose. Suddenly, Claire turned toward me. You just don't understand, Mom. You're holding us back." Before I could answer, she stormed into my room, grabbed my old leather bag, the one Henry had given me decades ago, and dragged it to the front door. The sound of it hitting the driveway echoed like thunder. "Go!" she screamed. "We can't do this anymore." Emma and Josh stood frozen on the staircase, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Mark crossed his arms, silent but firm. And me? I stood in the doorway, rain soaking my thin sweater, my heart breaking in my chest. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Some gasped, others whispered. The humiliation burned worse than the cold. I bent down, picked up my bag with trembling hands, and stepped into the night. My daughter slammed the door behind me. The click of the lock was louder than any scream. I walked down that wet street with tears mixing into the rain. Every step felt heavier than the last. My husband's voice echoed in my memory. "When I'm gone, our daughter will take care of you." But she hadn't. She had thrown me away. I sat on a park bench that night, shivering, clutching my bag. I thought I had lost everything. My family, my home, my dignity. I whispered to myself, "Why, Claire? Why would you do this to me?" I believed that was the lowest point of my life, but I was wrong, because what I discovered next changed everything. I woke the next morning on that same park bench. My back ached, my clothes were damp, my fingers were stiff with cold. Birds chirped overhead, but to me, the sound felt cruel, mocking. I pulled my bag closer, the one thing I had left. Inside, a few clothes, a photograph of Henry, and some old documents I hadn't looked at in years. My stomach growled, but pride kept me from begging. I told myself I'd go back, that Claire would calm down, that she'd open the door and apologize. But when I walked up her driveway, hope crumbled into dust. The curtains were shut tight. My key no longer worked, and taped to the door was a note in Claire's handwriting. "Mom, this isn't working anymore. Please understand. We need space to live our lives. Take care of yourself. Claire." I pressed my forehead against the door. My chest ached so badly I could barely breathe. I knocked. I whispered her name. Nothing. Inside, I thought I heard laughter. Emma's, maybe Josh's, but it only made the silence outside heavier. That day, I wandered. My legs carried me aimlessly. My mind a blur. I found myself outside the diner where I used to work. The smell of frying bacon brought tears to my eyes. I remembered how many nights I spent there, saving every penny to send Claire to college. Every blister, every aching muscle, all of it air for her. And now I was nothing but a burden. The days blurred together. I found temporary shelter at a community center. They offered me food, a cot, a roof. But shame was my constant companion. I couldn't believe my daughter had done this. And then, one night, as I dug through my bag, I found something that stopped my heart. Papers, old papers I had signed months earlier. When Claire asked me to help with refinancing their mortgage, I had trusted her. She said, "Mom, just sign here, it'll make things easier for the bank." I hadn't questioned her. I never questioned her. But now, under the dim light of the shelter, I saw what I had really signed. Not a refinance, a transfer, assets, accounts that belonged to Henry and me, my savings, my security. She had tricked me into handing it all over. My throat closed, my hands shook. My daughter, my Claire, hadn't just thrown me out. She had stolen from me. The betrayal was sharper than a knife. I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling all night, anger and sorrow twisting inside me. Images flooded my mind. Claire at 6 years old, crying when her bike broke, and me running to fix it. Claire at 16, clutching her acceptance letter, me clapping with pride, though I didn't know how I'd pay the tuition. Claire at 24, in her wedding dress, smiling as I whispered, "I'll always be here for you." And now she had gutted me with her own hands. I needed answers. The next morning, I waited outside her house. When she stepped out, dressed neatly for work, she froze. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Mom," she hissed, glancing at the neighbors. "What are you doing here?" "I know what you did," I whispered. My voice cracked, but my eyes burned with fury. "The papers you stole from me." Her lips tightened. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked around, lowered her voice, and snapped, "Keep your voice down. You signed them. Nobody forced you. I trusted you." My voice trembled with rage. "I gave you everything." Claire's face hardened like stone. "I have my own family now. You had your life. Don't ruin mine." And with that, she turned, walked to her car, and drove away. I stood there shaking as if lightning had struck me. She hadn't even bothered to hide the truth. That night, I dreamed of Henry. He stood at the edge of my bed, his face sad, his voice gentle. "Don't let her destroy you, Anna. You're stronger than this." But in the daylight, Strength felt impossible. The following week was worse. I saw them at the grocery store once. Emma tugged at Claire's sleeve, saying, "Grandma!" with excitement. But Claire snapped, "Not now," and pulled her away. Emma's face crumpled in confusion. My heart shattered all over again. Later, I heard through an old neighbor that Claire had bragged about paying off debts, about how things finally felt lighter without Mom in the way. Without Mom in the way. The words dug into my soul like claws. At the shelter, some women whispered about me. "She looks so refined. How did she end up here?" I wanted to scream the truth, that my own daughter had ripped my life away. But shame clamped my mouth shut. It kept getting worse. Bills came in the mail, yes, even there. Debt collectors searching for me, because my name was still attached to accounts Claire had drained. I realized she hadn't just stolen my assets. She had left me carrying the blame. One evening, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was Mark. "Stop bothering Claire. Move on with your life. You're not welcome back." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The man whose children I tucked in, whose meals I cooked, whose laundry I folded, was now telling me to vanish. I wanted to die. I walked to the bridge near the river, stood there as the water rushed below. For a moment, the idea of stepping forward seemed easier than enduring this pain. But then I thought of Henry. I thought of Emma's little voice calling, "Grandma!" I thought of the nights I sang lullabies, of the life I had fought so hard to keep going. No, they would not win by breaking me, but the truth was, I was broken, alone, shattered, and yet. Sometimes, in the ashes of despair, a spark appears, because one night as I sat in the shelter, an old friend walked in. Her name was Margaret. We hadn't seen each other in years. She was older, tougher, with sharp eyes and a sharp mind. When she heard my story, she leaned closer, her voice low and firm. "Anna, your daughter didn't just betray you. She committed fraud, and fraud leaves a trail." I blinked, stunned. "But what can I do?" Margaret's eyes gleamed. "Fight back. You still have more power than you think." And that's when the cracks in my despair began to fill with something new. Not joy, not hope, something darker, stronger, determination. I thought my story was over. I thought I had been erased from the world, discarded like trash. But that night, when Margaret sat across from me in the shelter cafeteria, something inside me stirred. She looked at me the way nobody else had in months. Not with pity, not with annoyance, but with sharp, steady eyes that said, "You still matter." "Fraud leaves a trail," she repeated, tapping the table with her finger. "Claire can't just steal from you without leaving evidence. You sign things, yes. But if she tricked you, if she manipulated you, the law sees that as coercion. You were vulnerable. She used that." I blinked at her, overwhelmed. "But she's my daughter." Margaret leaned closer. "And that makes it worse. Family betrayal cuts deeper. Judges don't ignore that." Her words lingered in the air like thunder. My chest ached. The thought of dragging my own daughter through court felt impossible, but so did the thought of letting her win. "I don't know if I have the strength," I whispered. Margaret reached across, placed her wrinkled hand over mine. "Anna, you've been through hell, but I've known you since you were a girl. You were always tougher than you looked. Don't let her write the ending of your story." That night, I lay in my narrow cot, staring at the ceiling. Henry's voice echoed in my head. "Take care of yourself, Anna. Don't let anyone take your dignity." For weeks, I had let grief chain me, but now grief was hardening into something sharper. Resolve. The next morning, Margaret took me to a small legal aid office downtown. The lawyer, a gray-haired man named Peter, listened carefully as I explained everything. The move into Claire's house. The way she convinced me to sign papers. The eviction. The financial ruin. He didn't flinch. He didn't dismiss me. He nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Mrs. Turner," he said firmly, "what your daughter did could be considered elder abuse and fraud. If you still have those papers, if you have any proof, texts, emails, anything, we can build a case." I pulled the documents from my bag. They were wrinkled, damp from the rain, but still legible. His brow furrowed as he scanned them. "This is more serious than I thought," he murmured. "You didn't sign a refinance. You signed a transfer of ownership. She essentially stripped you of your assets under false pretenses. That's illegal." Illegal. The word struck me like lightning. I wasn't just a burden. I wasn't just unwanted. I was a victim of a crime. But could I really fight my own daughter? Could I drag her name through mud? Peter seemed to read my hesitation. "You don't have to decide today, but know this. If you do nothing, she'll win, and you'll stay here while she spends what she stole from you." That night, I walked along the river, the same place where I had once considered ending my life. But this time, instead of despair, I felt a strange fire burning in my chest. I whispered into the dark, "Claire, you threw me out like garbage. You stole from me, you broke me. But you forgot one thing. I'm still your mother, and you don't betray a mother without consequences." Over the next days, Margaret and I gathered everything. Old text messages where Claire had asked me to sign quickly, no need to read. Receipts of my savings deposits that mysteriously vanished. Even voice messages, one where she sighed, "Mom, just trust me. You don't need to understand all this bank stuff." Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, but the most powerful piece of all came unexpectedly. One afternoon, Emma, my granddaughter, found me at the park. She ran up to me, her little arms wrapping tight around my waist. "Grandma," she whispered, glancing nervously around. "Mom said you're gone because you don't love us anymore, but I know that's not true." Tears filled my eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, I love you more than anything." She bit her lip, then pulled a small folded paper from her pocket. "I heard Mom talking to Dad. She said she was glad you signed the house over because now they can finally sell it and move away. I don't know what it means, but I thought you should know." I held that crumpled note like it was gold. Proof, a confession, spoken in the safety of their home, overheard by the one person they underestimated. I hugged Emma so tightly she squealed. "Thank you, my love. One day you'll understand how much you just helped me." As she skipped away, a storm raged inside me. They were planning to sell everything, to erase every trace of me. But they didn't know the fire they had lit. The weak old woman they had thrown into the rain was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had nothing left to lose. And that kind of woman? She's dangerous. I walked into the courtroom with trembling hands, but my head held high. The woman who had shuffled through rain with nothing but a suitcase was gone. In her place was someone who finally understood her own worth. Claire sat at the defendant's table, perfectly polished in a navy blazer, her husband smug at her side. She barely looked at me, except for a flicker of annoyance, like I was an inconvenience rather than her mother. But her expression changed the moment Peter, my lawyer, began speaking. "Your Honor, this case isn't simply about property." Peter's voice rang steady. "It's about exploitation. A daughter, under the guise of helping her elderly mother, manipulated her into signing away her home and life savings. This isn't a family misunderstanding. It is fraud, and we can prove it." He laid the evidence on the table. The rushed documents, the bank withdrawals, the text messages where Claire told me not to read the fine print. And then, the final blow, Emma's handwritten note describing what she overheard. Claire's face drained of color. Her lawyer sputtered, trying to paint me as forgetful, confused, unreliable. But when Peter asked me to testify, I spoke with more strength than I'd ever known I had. "I may be old," I said, my voice steady, "but I am not stupid. I trusted my daughter because she was my blood. She looked me in the eye and told me to sign things I didn't understand. I believed her. That trust was used as a weapon against me." I glanced at Claire. For the first time, she wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge leaned forward, frowning. "Mrs. Turner, are you telling this court that your daughter coerced you into signing away your home?" "Yes," I said firmly, "and when I had nothing left, she threw me onto the street like trash." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Claire's perfect facade began to crack. Then came the final piece of evidence. Peter pulled out a recording device. Margaret had helped me set it up weeks earlier when I gathered courage to confront Claire. On the tape, my voice trembled. Claire, why did you take everything from me? Her voice followed, sharp and dismissive. Because, Mom, you don't need it anymore. You're old. We need the money more than you. Stop acting like a victim. The courtroom fell silent. Claire's lawyer paled. Her husband shifted uncomfortably. The judge's gavel hit the bench. This is damning evidence, he declared. I see no reason to delay judgment. And just like that, the tide turned. The ruling was swift. The house and assets were to be restored to me. Claire would face charges of elder abuse and fraud. Her name, once respected in the community, was now dragged through the mud for everyone to see. The fallout spread quickly. Neighbors who once praised her turned their backs. Her husband left her within weeks, unwilling to weather the scandal. And Emma, sweet Emma, chose to stay with me most weekends, the bond between us stronger than ever. As for me, for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't just win back my home, I won back my dignity, my voice, my place in the world. Claire called me once, sobbing on the phone. Mom, please, I made a mistake. I lost everything. Can't you forgive me? I let her cry. I let her beg. And then I answered with the calmness of someone who had survived the storm. Claire, I will always love you, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You threw me away, and now you must live with the life you created. I hung up the phone and never looked back. The revenge wasn't in destroying her. It was in reclaiming myself and letting the world see who she truly was. And for once, justice wasn't just a word. It was mine. The day I walked back into my house, it felt different. The walls, once heavy with betrayal, now breathed again. I opened the curtains, let the sunlight pour in, and whispered to myself, "This is mine. It always was." The neighbors came by, some with pies, some with flowers, most with apologies. They admitted they had believed Claire's version of events, that I was old, confused, in need of her care. But now the truth was out, and in their eyes, I wasn't just the fragile old woman they pitied. I was the woman who fought back and won. Emma skipped down the hallway, laughing, her footsteps echoing like music. She carried a drawing she had made in school, me standing tall beside her, holding hands. At the bottom she wrote, "My grandma is my hero." I cried when I saw it, not tears of pain this time, tears of healing. Life didn't magically become perfect. There were still nights I woke up thinking about Claire, about the little girl she once was, running into my arms after school, hair messy, eyes bright. I mourned that child. I mourned the love I thought would last a lifetime, but I no longer mourned myself. I began volunteering at the local senior center, helping others learn about protecting themselves legally, showing them how to spot the tricks buried in paperwork, how to say no when family tried to take advantage. They listened, wide-eyed, and some hugged me after, whispering, "Thank you. You saved me." That became my purpose. As for Claire, word spread quickly about her downfall. She lost her job. Her husband filed for divorce. Friends who once gathered at her dinner table now crossed the street to avoid her. Every action, every cruel word she had hurled at me came back to her like a mirror shattering in her face. And still, she called sometimes, late at night, always the same message, trembling through tears. "Mom, please, please forgive me, please talk to me." I never answered. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean opening the door to be hurt again. I built something new with the pieces she tried to break. Emma still visits every weekend. We cook together, we plant roses in the garden, and when she curls up beside me, I know she is learning something important. That betrayal does not define us. That age does not erase us. That strength can come even after the deepest wound. And when I sit on the porch at sunset, the air warm against my face, I feel peace. Because my daughter once threw me out like I was nothing. But I proved I was everything. And that was the day she realized she hadn't just lost my house or my money. She had lost me. Forever.